Welcome to our Anything Goes podcast. Glad you've joined us for another episode. Today, I am speaking with Buffy Paul. She is an executive pastor at Village Church, and she is over all of our family ministries. So that's, well, what is that? That's kids,
youth,
young adults, women's,
VSOM.
So if you are a part of a family in any way, Buffy works on the ministries that impact you. So really happy to have her today.
Thanks.
She is here though because I wanted to talk to her about family stuff, but specifically kids, parenting, that kind of angle, because right now, I think the moment we're finding ourselves in, and of course the moment we're in will not last forever, but this COVID moment where everything has changed and we're at home all the time, and the rhythms are different, and school's been out, and we're figuring that all out. I don't want to talk about how to parent through that, because that I think would be boring now. Instead, it's the things that have come up out of this experience that actually illuminate important ideas and topics and things that would just be really helpful for us to explore in terms of what kids go through and how to understand them better, how to do as good of a job as we can in raising them and providing them with what they need. So thank you for joining us, Buffy, up here. So maybe just tell us a little bit, we quickly did there, what is it you do at Village? How long have you been around Village? How did you even get into doing any of this with us on staff?
All right. So I'm an executive pastor. Like you said, I oversee kids, youth, young adults, women's, Village School of Ministry. I've been around Village since, I guess, we launched. So I was on the core launch team, my husband and I, and my in-laws. So that was back in 2009, I think we started meeting. I worked for a research replication site for kids with autism since I was, I want to say like 19. I did that for about 18 years. In the midst of that, like I said, we planted Village. It wasn't until 2013 that I came on staff. And that was kind of, actually you can picture, how that all came about was I had lots of different roles at Village, like from setting up pipe and drape to the gym to, ironically, never kids. That was my husband, he's the fun one. The funniest role or ask I probably ever had when Mark said to me one Sunday when things started to get really busy at Rosemary Heights, like it was probably around the time that we're putting the pop-up tent out in the playground with a wired TV out there and 20 people are watching Good Friday or something. But Mark's like, but seriously, Beth, if someone comes in with a gun, like you got that, right? Like, I think I was actually pregnant with my third at that time. I was like, no, I don't got it. I'm totally letting you die. Anyways.
So we share that experience. We've both been there in the gun conversation with Mark.
Yeah, I'm American. Fun fact, still don't have a gun.
Right.
Yeah, anyway.
So you're not packing right now?
No.
Surprising. Okay, so also you are from Wisconsin.
I am from Partyville, Wisconsin. Population 1,300.
Right. So for you, a big part of your life and interest are college sports.
I love college sports.
Right. So what team or school, I should say, would you hate the most out of Ohio State, Michigan?
Oh, Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan's the one.
I mostly because my Canadian husband, who I met at Trinity, I'm totally a Badger fan, like football, basketball, anything they do, I love. The only college fight song he knew is Michigan. Okay. And it's all he could sing. And it's all about what did Michigan have, the Fab Five or the whoever, anyways, just a bunch of garbage. So Michigan, I can't. Like
I figured it would either be Michigan or Ohio State. Like
because Ohio State football always,
right?
Agree.
But is there like a big rivalry with like Minnesota or something? Like, is there like a sub-rivalry?
With Minnesota, there's the Axe, I think, and with Iowa, there's like a pig or thing that goes back and forth.
This doesn't sound like American Midwest at all.
I don't know, it doesn't.
Pigs and axes and football.
And we're so entrenched. We have 3 kids. 8 is 8. Leo's 11. Eli's 17. Eli's the only one born in Wisconsin. The rest born in Washington. But Leo solidly, I don't even know if it's turned yet, but solidly wants to be Bucky. So the mascot, Bucky Badger. So we actually have a DVD called Becoming Bucky. that we had to rebuy. It's been watched so many times. It shows tryouts and all the ins and outs of the costume qualifications, all the special stuff. Anyways.
Number one thing you miss or just wish you had here that you don't, that you had in the
It's
States?
college sports.
Yeah.
I always say to Jay, if we went back, like, in terms of managing our money, season tickets for football games, college football, not the Packers, I like them, and basketball games would be
That's
big.
what I think a lot of people don't know, even, or Canadians, about the States, is that in a lot of regions that have even NFL teams, it's the college team that's actually a bigger deal.
Like, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, I think, is ranked academically in the top 25 in the world. And huge school. They're also #1 party school almost every year in Sports Illustrated. But yeah, they fill a 90,000 person stadium for football. The town itself is around, I think, 250,000 people.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So every Saturday is like COVID there.
Yeah.
There's no one on the streets.
Anyway,
okay, so
let's get into
right now, like I was saying, it's a bizarre time, but what are some of the things you think this time is kind of highlighting for us that as parents, we just need to make sure we're aware of with our kids? Like, I have 1-year-old twins, so I got 1 year under my, well, I guess 2 years under my belt if you count them both. 1 year.
Got it.
And obviously, getting into that world, they're first kids, so it's quite a ride figuring out, parenting and all that kind of stuff, of course. But like, what would you say are some of the things you think, or maybe even one thing that coming out of this, parents, this is an opportunity to realize that after this is still an issue that you got to be aware of, or something you got to just know about your kids and how you're dealing with them.
Like, I think a lot of parents who have kids in school are so much more grateful for teachers. Like, I've seen a few Instagram posts saying like, so enough with the Starbucks gift cards and candles, I'll be buying my teacher a Hummer next Christmas type thing. Right. Just because you're experiencing what it's like to be on the other side of your kid maybe and educating them. So my husband's a principal. He's the one creating what the elementary school is doing, and we are partaking with a couple of our kids. But nonetheless, I think they've done a great job with how they've structured their system. But what we're realizing, some strengths in our kids, probably they're way more resilient than we thought. Like, they're not fear-ridden, they're not anxious. We're really grateful for that. But we're seeing holes. Like, the fact that on our kids, we have what's called the daily 7. So our kids have 7 things to do within the day. There's things you have to do within the week, things that are choices. One thing that is a mandatory every day is you do something with faith building, just like you do something with physical activity, literacy, numeracy. So faith building, embarrassingly, I'm an executive pastor. My husband's the principal of a Christian school. I just felt challenged. And like, the teacher's stuff is better than what we do with our kids. And maybe Jay and I probably personally shy away from structure in terms of we're not a break out the devotional after dinner. Not that it's wrong. I didn't even grow up in a real faith-based home. Jason probably wasn't their style either. So we're not that, but then sometimes maybe the weakness in that is we're too loose. Right. And we're like, but we have so many good conversations, and we do, but so to me it was eye-opening probably how much we don't really just concentrate on a discipline of prayer and actually teach them what it looks like. So for me, it was just a bit of a reflection, like, okay, faith building, the school's telling me what to do or giving me suggestions. It's better and more than what we do already. Not that there's a quantity where all of a sudden you check the box, but that was eye-opening, just like, hey, we could do better. So that was a good conversation for Jay and I. We also realized probably Jay's working full-time, I'm working full-time, we've got 3 kids doing school. You learn about your kids in terms of who needs affirmation after every step of the way, who needs that, hey, you're so great, to go on, and who can just plow through their stuff. So kind of learning and looking like, this is things that you need, and not that they're bad, but things to watch. Right. those are a couple things.
It sounds like you're kind of saying, though, in these sort of moments when you're kind of pushed to have more face time even, don't waste it on not learning about your kid.
Yes.
Like learning stuff about them instead of just making assumptions, or it's kind of like an opportunity. To learn things. It's funny you said that about the spiritual development stuff, and you're embarrassed and you're I'm the same. Like for us, and I'm an executive pastor too. And for us, it's like we were sitting down with the boys recently because they're eating more kind of like with us now. Like they're eating our food and all that kind of thing. And we're like, I guess we should be praying before the meals with them.
Jeremy, you don't pray.
And then we realized like we just don't. When it's just the two of us, like we don't tend to do that at dinner. It's like we're sitting down, whatever, in front of the TV. It's like those little holes where you go, oh yeah, well we want to develop that. We want them to know prayer in their life.
Yeah.
And then it like, shoot, okay, well let's fold their little tiny hands and like get them to,
fold their hands. Jeremy.
Do all that sort of stuff so that like we get the discipline and the practice, and it's like, shoot, we should be thinking about this stuff. Like,
I think it just highlights all the things that are easy to bury and go, no, it's fine. No one else is doing that either. We're good. We're on par. Or, when the teacher says Leo asked to get up and go to the bathroom a lot, she just needs to learn how to be more engaging. And then you're at home all day and you're watching. You're like, holy smokes, honey, like here's the ball chair here. Yes, you can work on the trampoline. Yes, you can do this. Go run 3 laps around the yard. Like, oh, your teacher wasn't kidding. So I think it's a good mirror, and it allows us a chance to own a few more things, like you said. And then what are we going to take from it? Where are we going to go?
What about issues like, things that maybe we as parents might think, okay, right now, this is a big deal, but as everything kind of changes, goes back to normal, I'll forget about it. Like, I'm thinking of something like isolation. So, kids are having a hard time. They can't see their friends as much. They are, and so they're isolated and all that.
Yeah.
But is there something there that we can't just forget about? That, no, actually, maybe we're not attuned to the fact that they have these feelings ongoing in their normal
so you're
life.
saying it's not just now, but
questions of like, connection and who am I, and does anyone care about me? And right now it's probably a bigger deal because they don't get all the affirmation and see all their friends. But it's like not just maybe forgetting that when this is all over, that those are still questions they're asking of themselves maybe, or just because they can see their friends again doesn't mean they don't feel isolation in their life for these kind of.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to think specifically of my kids and if I've gone there, so maybe you've given me something to think about. Yeah, I guess just looking at what, I think it highlights everything. Just like when you say your biggest strength is your biggest weakness, it's like, okay, so everything's coming to light. What am I going to do with the kid that I'm realizing, Ada, now the challenge is we have Messenger Kids app. She nonstop is chatting with people, and there's wins in that. But yeah, you're right. I've not actually even thought about, like, these are friends she wasn't communicating with at all, or cousins in California, cousins in Wisconsin. Like, this is great, but then it's like 6 different friends at school that I never met. I am not proud to say, I'm trying to think, Ada has had 1 play date with a kid from her school.
Interesting.
She's in grade 2 at our house. She's been invited. So maybe it does tell me I need to, 1, get to know these kids. I don't drop off and pick up because my husband does that. I don't know the families. So I'm pretty much like, do we need to drive to Vancouver for a play date? Do we need to do that? And it's like, oh, maybe she's telling me yes. So I might need to lean into that a little bit more. Ask her, get to know those friends.
Well, that points to something else, which is some of the different habits even at this point. So, kids using social media more, or Zoom calls and email and all that at earlier ages because of school and whatever and all that family things. So what do we got to be looking out for with that stuff?
Like you said, I think in the first week of isolation hitting, everyone was crazy in terms of churches, schools, everyone. How much is too much? The school wants my grade 4 to have an email. I don't feel okay with that, but that's the only way they say they can communicate. Like they're going to do 3 Zoom calls a week. Oh my gosh, Village Youth is using Zoom as a small group. Like there's so much around the safety of it. And I think then as people working in education, like my husband, or in churches, we're also hugely, no one wants a Zoom bomber in your kid's small group doing whatever whatever we're hearing they're doing, not good things.
No.
I feel like that's died down a lot. I feel like it is a good time, though, like you said, going forward. It highlights how much do you even know about any of this stuff, and what is good out there. So there's so much good, and I'm finding with my kids in the connectivity piece, the Messenger Kids app, I'm not trying to promote them, it's just one that I stumbled across, but man, like Ada is calling my, her step-grandpa, my stepdad, who I would honestly have to say we haven't connected regularly in a long time. Like years, it's on and off. She's calling him like crazy. Oh, I'm out fishing. Or what are you using for bait? I'm like, who are you talking to? Grandpa Eddie. It's like, oh, cool. You know? So there's some really cool things with that. Of course, there's a ton of safety and things to be aware of. You got to do your research. One thing that we are doing for families this month actually is having Sid Coop come on, who is the sage of youth ministry in BC, I'm hearing, maybe Canada, but do some digital parenting in this digital age and talking about safety guards, that kind of stuff. So we're learning now, parents should, if they haven't already, how good their grade 2 probably already is at YouTube and stuff. So it's not like, oh, we're not ready to talk about it because we're not getting them a phone until grade 8 or something. It's like, you know, like your kid's probably all over YouTube already. They ask to see one video, you say yes, you walk away and go start loading the dishwasher, and they're 8 videos down the road. Like, do you know all the places they could get to?
Do you think most parents are oblivious to how much their kids are actually into all that stuff? I'm not asking that to shame anyone. I don't mean that. No. I just mean, you know, as a reality check. Do you think?
If I am a test to that, and I consider myself a fairly average individual, I would say yeah, because I'm learning about YouTubers that I didn't know about during this time. The Ada's watched the entire episodes. Like, well, this is Dangy Bros, and they're whatever. Oh, they're Christians. They like to talk about this. Oh, and then this is their girlfriends. They also, I'm like, oh, the girlfriends, what do they do? You know, it's like, I didn't know, and she's halfway through the season, or however they call that on YouTube. So I can't think that I'm probably alone on that.
Right. Okay. What about structure? So one of the big changes, obviously, recently is the regular rhythms for a lot of kids, families, kind of just messed up. What does that highlight for us in terms of just even from a developmental side, the impact, the importance around rhythms and structure for all kids? Like I've talked to some people on this, and it's like, it's literally like they're wired to need certain structural things in their life. Yeah. That's how they will develop, and so.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to quote research and studies on that, so anecdotal with an undergrad in psych. Some things that I would say is, I think the structure brings security, but at the same time, there's a flip side to that when we structure things so heavily. Like I heard someone talking just the other day about the difference between having a schedule for your kid at home during the day during this time and using the language more around routines and habits and stuff like that. So the way I would see that is thinking of this time and going, hey, whether they're 2 or whether they're 17, you're building habits for the future, whereas a schedule doesn't really do that. It tells you what to do at what time, and it's more rote. And like, you can feel failure as a parent when you're working away and you realize you didn't move them on to the next task, or they didn't, oh, now we're behind and now this. So like maybe moving forward, like Jay and I were just talking this afternoon about our 17-year-old. He's doing a really great job, and he was super not wanting a schedule. Like, do not put me on the whiteboard with Leo and Ada. It's like, fair enough, like you're 17, but the workload is big, and we're saying he's doing a really great job with that. But as parents, we're going, okay, we're a year outside of college, university. Do these habits work? So to put him on a schedule, we're like, he's gonna hate that. It's not gonna be good for our relationship. I actually also don't think it's gonna help him. A schedule doesn't help him. It's like imposed on him. And so we're saying, no, okay, how do we make it more of a dialogue versus a monologue? Like, this is what we're looking at big picture. This is what we really want for you and what we think is healthy. How do you think we get there in terms of self-care, in terms of,
So could you say like structure, might include schedule, might
Yes.
include some of these things, but it's a bigger issue.
It's a bigger issue.
It can be about expectations, being clear,
Yeah.
what are, clarity around, it's almost like, what can I count on?
Yeah.
What gets followed through on as a way to framework.
Yeah, and then as parents, we have control to decide what they can count on,
Right.
and what are the big pieces. So like I was kind of talking about with this faith building thing from the school, I'm like, do our kids really count on that with us? Like, is that part of their groove? Like, we know that we're going to spend time with mom and dad around this way. We know we're going to get a chance to ask that question, and we know, or is it not? So yeah, the security and the trust, probably building more confident kids to know that the adults in their life are people that are going to provide for them in various ways and be there for various things. I don't think any of us would say that's a bad thing. I think we still want that as adults.
I think that's helpful because I imagine a lot of parents probably, they go, look, my personal makeup and style isn't a bunch of lists.
Yeah.
And like I look on Instagram or whatever, and I see those parents that have chalkboarded out lists of every minute, and it's like, I'm not that. But it's like, okay, but that doesn't, what you're saying maybe is freeing actually, because it's like, that doesn't necessarily every definition of structure.
No.
It's just don't throw it, the baby out with the bat, that's a bad actually for this.
In this conversation, no.
Don't throw it out just because that's not you, because like, no, but maybe it's just providing some predictability in your house.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be charts and stars and.
Right. Like that's how I have a behavioralist background. So that's how you get a behavior on the map, is with reinforcement.
Right.
But you got to be able to move away from that, and it needs to become more of a heart thing. So yeah, we can rotely teach our kids things and routines and healthy habits and all that, but then there comes a piece where they have to understand it and know it, and it has to become a part of who they want to be. But I was just thinking about things your kids like can rely on, depend on, the routines and structures. Something going forward might be like Jay and I are working from home right now. We both kind of lock ourselves off in certain rooms. And I'm just thinking, we've gotten better at, and I'm just now reflecting on this, we've gotten better at, and now I would have to say the kids are also getting better. So we used to get interrupted a lot of questions about, can I have this? Can I have this? I'm done with this. Should I this? And can we ride our bikes here? Can we do this? And now I'm realizing I'm doing more of, hey, I'm going on a call, I'll be out in an hour and then we'll talk about lunch, so a little bit of building that in so they know what to expect. So I'm thinking about when we're going back to being at the office and stuff, for me at the office, Jay at school, and what can they expect from us? So now we have to think about how to build that. We get like 3 hours with our kids in the evening before they go to bed because our kids get home a bit later from school. But what can they, it's like, oh, does all of this go away? Because there's some really good things that we're really jamming with. So yeah.
You think sometimes, I think sometimes we probably overestimate, and then sometimes, do you think we underestimate our impact on our kids? Like maybe we overestimate it in the sense of we think we have to do all these super incredible, perfect things all the time. But then do you think sometimes we underestimate just the mundane life and like parenting in the mundane, that it's all that stuff we maybe ignore or we don't think about that is actually having a big impact on our kids. I don't know.
I was saying to you earlier, I'm remembering that I'm not telling anyone to go out and buy his books or start listening to him now. But about 15, 20 years ago, Rob Bell was a name on the Christian scene, and he had a series of videos, I think, called Pneuma. And I just remember one called Dust. And I was saying to you, kind of reminds me of the time we're in now, and it's how I'm feeling. So he talks about the young Jewish boys in that time. They had to choose a rabbi, and then essentially they followed them around all day, so close that by the end of the day they wore the dust, the dirt from walking through the streets and stuff. They wore the dust of their rabbi. And I'm just thinking, like, very literally, like, what does it look like to be Leo or Ada or Eli nonstop, like, following me around? What are they seeing? And it's so eye-opening about our daily habits, things that we think, oh, well, I was at work, I was busy. For all they know, I was reading my Bible at the office. Like,
Right.
Who knows? Like, maybe I was reading on my phone. Like, it's just everything is visible. It's the little things that you do. Yeah.
I had a moment like that recently where our dog was just driving me nuts. And Jenny was out, so I had the twins trying to get them fed and then get a bit of it, and the dog's going, and I kind of like snapped a bit at the dog over in the kitchen, a little bit away from the boy. And I came back to the boys, and I just like, they're kind of like looking at me, and I just thought, yeah, so what did I just do to ruin them for the rest of their life? And how I interacted with our dog. Like, is that what you're gonna do with me?
Shoot.
It wasn't that.
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows, you only call the SPCA.
There was no
wasn't
kicking
like
dogs.
That. It was just like, in the way that I kind of like was angry about, frustrated at and it's like, yeah, like is that not happening every moment that they're looking at me, right? And so part of me is like, how can I possibly bear the weight of parenting if that's true? I don't know. Well, what would you say to that? Like,
I think
parenting impossible then? Like how?
No, because they're little humans too. So they're one, so you're not going to explain what just happened. But the way Jay and I function is everything's a conversation. So when we blow it, it's like, great, I'm not covering it up. Like, just here it is. There's where I went with that. And sometimes my husband will be like, and mom was wrong.
Right. So I should have sat them down and said,
yes, you should.
Dad doesn't hate the dog.
I don't
doesn't
know
hate
who the
you.
1-year-old is. It's just like, yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your background before you came onto Stafford Village. So you did a lot of work helping families with autism and kids dealing with that. So tell me a little bit about that. What was the sort of work you did? What was your role in that? And the reason I think it's interesting to talk about is not necessarily so much for people who might be listening going, what do I do with my autistic child? Because I think most of the time probably they are getting help and every reason.
And it's very specific.
It's actually for the rest of the world to go, this is what I was thinking about, was how do we do a good job making sure, and this is just one kind of issue, but on things like this, how do the rest of us do a good job of being supportive, of being empathetic, of not being judgmental, all these little things. So tell us a little bit about what you did with that, and then.
So like I said, I worked for 18 years. I worked with a research replication site who did behavioral therapy with kids with autism. So we had replicated the research, and we had 5 offices in the States, one in Malaysia, one in Australia, and one in England, and then Canada when I moved here. So that was cool. Worked with probably over 100 families, all in-home therapy. And the research would say about the 3-year-old mark, they should be getting about 40 hours of therapy a week. So I started out as a young college kid here, even in Langley, working with a few families. And so I'd be the one actually doing the therapy. And as I kind of grew throughout the org, I became the one consulting and running the program and then directing and whatnot. So I would say, I don't have a number, but I probably was working consistently with over 100 families, probably saw way more than that. So when I say that I saw over 100 families, it's not like they come into a spot like this. They did that once a month to meet with us and the psychologists and stuff, but in their homes. So imagine having 40 hours of therapy a week. If you look on Craigslist even now, type in behavioral interventionist and all the ads that will come up for families who are looking to hire. They're always trying to fill those 40 hours. College students, some are great, some are not great. You get some funding from the government. Anyway, so there's just so many factors coming into that. What I would say in terms of a piece of empathy would be for people to think about the last couple months and think about how much they want to get back to normal. And everyone keeps saying, when will we be back to normal? When will BC be open? I feel like that was a trend with these families. Like, they just want a sense of normal. They want to feel like they're one of the normal parents, dropping their kid off in school and just going, not having to come in with their Velcro picture schedule and their iPad, their meds, all these things. They don't want to have the special IEP meetings. They want to be able to send their kid to camp and not check on the list all the special needs. So as much as you feel like, oh, I want to get back to normal, for me, I would say main piece is just think about these families and how, for a lot of them, they want to be like what you and we're not all, I don't even know what normal is, but what they think is normal. The other piece of it that I saw was just the amount of grief. So not just in my first meeting with a family and they're saying, hey, yeah, we just got our diagnosis, what next? That's huge, and there's a tremendous amount of grief there, and if we had Josh here, he could tell us all the different ways that gets displayed. But for some families, I worked with like one little guy from when he was 4 until he was 12, and I don't know that I saw the grief leave the family. So thinking about what families are going for, they're like consistently grieving maybe a stage that they're not going to get to experience in the same way some of their friends are, grieving their dreams. We thought we were going to go to Hawaii. Well, guess what? He hated the sand and wouldn't let us put him down, and he's 8. Like, just like different things that they're letting go of and grieving dreams of maybe high school graduation and college. So to me, the grief was huge, and I was saying to you, when I came to work at Village, there's 2 factors in that. One was kind of that funny text back and forth with Mark and I, like trying to figure out how to fill certain role and what kind of person is it going to be to do this certain job. And then we're both like, hey, is that you? Yeah, I think that's me. That was one part of it. The other part of it was I had lost the empathy. Like I was, at one point when we were, just before we launched Village, my mom was terminally ill, and I was consulting with families still and working with them from Wisconsin while we cared for her. But I was running out of the grace, empathy. So when I would consult with a family and they're saying, hey, we're still not there, this isn't working, and I was just getting to the point where I'm like, if you do the things I tell you, it'll work. Just stop it. Like, right. So I'd be like, oh, so did you do this? No, they're just exhausted and tired. And even though I could see that, I couldn't, it was gone. It was just like, whether God took it out of me because he was moving me on, but I had to walk away because that's not what they need and they deserve.
Well, I think it sounds like it's the kind of work though that, you see things, you experience things, you're in so many hard situations. It's almost like, there are those kinds of industries where it's almost like you can't do this your whole life.
Maybe.
Because it's too hard.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna give what people need, there's almost like an expiration date on how much you can do that.
Yeah, I'm thankful that I somehow was aware, because to plow through that with families is obviously, it's like disservice.
Right. I think that's helpful though, because for families who don't experience that firsthand, I think there's probably a lot of unknowns. They just know the word, right, around it. And, there's stigma still, there's all these things, but like, I think to understand better, and I think the grief thing is huge. Understanding that, even just listening to you talk about that, I can actually start to put that in a category now, and I bet you a lot of people can if they think about it that way. Like, of any of us who have suffered, a big loss in our life, as a loved one, or with a disability or something that just now the world's different, for you, and you're not. That puts it into a framework, a category that hopefully for people helps, because you just sort of see, it's like the iceberg, thing, right? It's like all you see is you're out at the store and you see someone with a kid and they act a certain way and you just, right? And there's no empathy. Or you don't know how to interact with that. But understanding this hopefully is helpful for people to go, no, hang on. You're not seeing anything. There's huge stuff going on behind the scenes here.
I mean, so there's with this as well, there's appropriate times and people in your life, like don't go to the lady in the grocery store and start asking questions. But I think you can ask questions, like you can be curious if it's not self-serving because you want to feel I wonder how they do this. But within trust and safety, I think it's helpful for us who don't live that to ask and listen and try to understand what it's like, not to pity them, not to be like, none of us, no matter what our situation or hardship, and none of us want to be fixed or have all these solutions or I could do this for you. Not for that, but the whole being known, being accepted,
Right.
and then belonging. So whether that's us for our kids, whether it's as adults, but I would say it's the same for their families. They want to be known for what they're really capable of, what they're going through, the ugliness of their situation, and they want to be accepted for that. And then they want to know that they belong and they have people.
Right. Yeah. And I think that goes to the grief thing
Like
even
any
a
of
little
us.
bit, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is you're experiencing grief. You're not looking for someone to fix it. You're looking for someone to bring someone back for you. It's more like, no, do I have someone in my life that will be here with me through this, because it's a piece that I've lost, but that this piece actually comes in and becomes a new piece.
Yep.
That doesn't make it normal, doesn't make it back, but it gets me somewhere closer to that, at least in my life. We still have friends we can hang out with. We haven't lost that completely. That's so you did that work.
Yeah.
Then you come into ministry work, and now it's like you impact families, parents, kids with your ministry through the church. So the big question I was thinking about around that was this. It was in a religious context. What would you say Christianity does in this whole discussion? Like, what is the usefulness, should I say, or like the importance and impact of Christianity and worldview? A lot of people out there, it's like, Christianity is a negative influence on this or that or whatever, and don't brainwash the kids too early. Give them all their. But then, I'm going. But I think fundamentally, if you're in this on a ministry level, you must believe that this worldview actually has something important to speak into when it comes to parenting. So what is that?
Yeah. I mean, I think whether you're within the church in that context, or whether you're not, and your more main influences are just the friends and people you hang out with, everyone's saying it. Every conference I go to for work, everything I read educationally, like, all kids want is to be accepted, known, and belong. It's all they want. And if they don't have that, they're going somewhere else for it. So we'd say the gospel is like, could there be a better picture of that? Like, I was just saying to you about, like, just when the rubber hits the road, yeah, sure, Ada is singing the Lauren Daigle songs about who she is and all this identity stuff, but then she's writing her little Star of the Week note where she's got to write lovely things about a person in her class, and she's like, but Mom, this person's really not nice to me, and she calls me mushroom head every day, lots of times, and she's got tears in her eyes. How am I supposed to write nice things about her? And so it's that whole, the gospel, the accepting, the knowing, the belonging, it's not about you. It's nothing, Ada, about your mushroom head or lack of mushroom head. It's who God says you are. And so I was thinking, how does that practically sound? So what I actually said to her, again, I'm not saying I'm the guru, but this is what I said. I said, Ada, when you stand before God one day, you are who he says you are. I'm pretty sure mushroom head's not coming out of his mouth. We both have a laugh. But it is that. It's taking them outside of themselves, outside their need, if they're little pleasers deep down, outside the need, hopefully, to please you, outside of themselves altogether, just knowing that they can't add to it. The little certificate I brought home for my accelerated reading thing, it's great, and we should encourage them and tell them it's a good job, and they worked really hard for it, but it's not who they are. So
how can parents be attuned to that? How can they make sure they understand how to interact with their kids on a level where the gospel, where Christianity does and can inform all of those struggles and worldviews and questions with their kids? Like, how do you get there as parents?
Get there as parents.
Where you don't miss all that opportunity to weave the gospel into all of those life experiences. And
well, maybe slowing things down a little bit, not looking to fix the situations. Like I was thinking, shout out to Josh Cruz, the emotion coaching type approach with Ada when she says, well, she says I'm a mushroom head. They would teach you that you don't jump right in with a no, you're not this and you're not this. Like, you don't jump in with logic. Their brain's not ready to receive that. You need to totally hear them, totally be there with them, and affirm that emotion that they're feeling. You don't have to agree that it's right, but you affirm it, and then you can move forward. So I'm just thinking, if we do that for our kids, it allows us, like if we slow down and think, I can't just logically tell them X, Y, and Z. Jesus saved you, you're fine, whatever. It's like, oh man, it's a whole big picture, and there's an opportunity around every situation to sit and just remind them, hey, yeah, Leo, you're an amazing soccer player. Yes, you made the whatever team. That's amazing. You got shut out. You haven't scored 3 games in a row. It's cool. Like there's always a conversation, whether they're running and doing great, and you can say, oh, you're so amazing. It's like, it is, and always about, but why are you amazing? Like, because if you lost this, mom and dad don't love you any less. For our older one, we had that conversation recently. He's having some tough times and tough conversations, and we had to have a real trust conversation, and he doesn't want to leave it. I'm like, hey, like, honey, you can't make this better. We love you the same no matter what. It's just a crummy night. Right. You know what? God's in it. We love each other the same. You're no less in his eyes, and you're no less in our eyes, but we're going to call it a crummy night and call it quits. There's just this bit of a, hey, it's okay. It's not all about what we tell our kids they are, and it's beyond that. So you can screw up.
It feels
essentially,
like it feels like it's coming full circle though to the question around even the dust and the rabbis and whatever, where it's not, hey, parents, here's what you got to do. You got to go out and have a Bible verse ready, for every problem your kid has.
There are books for that if you need to know that.
But it's more, it sounds like what you're talking about is more of the gospel-centered worldview, which says certain things, and then do you as a parent actually operate in that with your life? So what is important to you? Because that's going to bleed out to what your kid thinks is important. And if to you image is important, because you haven't internalized that gospel framework about what your own image is in Christ, then your kid is going to see that, well, you define image as actually an important thing. And then when they get called a mushroom head, they might go, that's a massive problem for me because image is important, because that gospel thing hasn't trickled down in the mundane, just how you live in the world.
And even how they respond. So as they get older, teaching them like, hey, the way you're able to process that because of your worldview being gospel-centered, like that can also change lives. Like, so we're able to talk through with Adam, like, tell me about her more. Like, what are some things? It's like, oh, she plays hockey. Great. Like, so these are some really great things. And I'm like, well, does she love Jesus? Well, I don't know, but she prays for her dad a lot because he doesn't love Jesus. I'm like, that is a beautiful thing. Encourage her in that. So there's ways to teach them that the way they respond can also really show the gospel to others. And I was going to say, as parents, like you were saying, this dust thing, everything coming full circle, kind of putting our money where our mouth is because our kids are watching us every second. Fun story. I was on FaceTime a couple Saturdays ago. We had gone to Krispy Kreme and bought a bunch of donuts. And my really good friend and her sweet 2 little girls were on FaceTime with me, kindergarten and grade 2. I'm going to use her name. They're not going to care. So sweet little Reese, who says it all. I'm like, okay, Reese. I'm like scanning the donuts. Like, which one do you want us to drop off for you? Which one do you want? And she's like, Auntie Buffy, are you pregnant? So I've got the captive audience. I've got Reese, I've got Paige, I have my friend in the background who we've talked about as friends. You talk about your body image, how you feel, whatever. I got Ada standing right there, Leo's right there, all eyes are thump on me. And it's like, what do I want to say right now? There's a lot of things that circled through, did the laps. But that's where, like, even talking about that with your kids, it's like, I was just thinking, what do I want this little girl to hear? Because I can't make a joke about it and, oh yeah, that's whatever isolation does to you, like your donuts and your drive-thru. I can't, and so like, and this isn't trying to make me look good, but it was just super eye-opening, and it was like, by the grace of God, I did not spew out sarcasm and jokes, like, which is my typical reaction for protection. And I crafted something around which is a true fact, Leo loves my hugs better than my husband's hugs. He says they're softer. Anyways, we'll leave it. I'm like, Reese, I'm really working on my soft hugs. So anyways, I'm just saying they're there every minute. And like that could have been the moment. I'm thinking, by the grace of God, ideally it wouldn't have been, but if I blew that, that's a moment. This young girl goes, this is a pastor at my church, and she just dissed her body.
Right. Yeah, in the Old Testament, there's a lot of focus on, when it talks about parenting, it talks about this is how you actually raise up the next generation of God-fearing people, is through whether the parents embody this or not. And I wonder sometimes if, in our rush to provide independence and all these kinds of things, it's like, think back though to like those kinds of histories where it's like, no, actually God's people are building generations of God's people, and that starts with us actually living that.
Yeah.
And then we live it, and then hopefully that creates the next generation who, see that in us and then live that out. But I like what you said earlier too about how, you get it wrong, you screw it up, you mess up, and you own it, and and I think that's great advice too. It's like, you don't hide it, or it's like, we're wrong, because even that transparency, I think that's part of the gospel too.
Yeah.
Is admitting failure and that you're not perfect.
So when your 1-year-old isn't one anymore, you'll get many chances to do that. That's when I can't even remember. I think it was someone in our church, maybe. I don't know. I learned that from someone, and then we started doing it, I think maybe when Eli was like 5. We did a lot more going back and apologizing to our kids. Like someone had talked about having a really bad drop-off at school with their kids and how they had to make that right. And I remember calling daycare once after dropping Eli off, and who knows why I was on my way to work, so I'm focused, and I get super snappy, and I know that about myself. So I was probably super snappy. I don't remember anymore now. But I remember calling and being like, can I talk to Eli? And the kids are kind of like, yeah, okay. But you got to think. You're teaching them, like, how to own that stuff themselves, and not everything's a big deal when you operate in a relationship of trust, that you can go and be like, okay. Yeah, that was it. We didn't have to sit down and have a big family meeting over mom losing her marbles this morning. Like, she called, she apologized, we're great.
Right.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thanks for joining me.
Yeah.
Thanks for having the conversation. I hope this is helpful for people who are listening or watching online. Not just obviously in the moment we're in, or we're kind of figuring out how to get out of, but just bigger picture, because I think these are important themes, important things to be thinking about ongoing. So thank you, Buffy.
Welcome.
Thanks for being here. And for everyone tuning in, we will see you on the next episode of the Anything Goes podcast.